You know, rain can be a calming weather event or a horrid nightmare. Much like animating rain can be enjoyably easy or a complicated conundrum. Well, in this video, we're going to see the difference as I animate rain in 10 seconds, 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour, and then 10 hours. I think this will be fun. So, at first, I was thinking, rain takes a lot of lines. It's going to be difficult to do in 10 seconds. But I think I can just spam lines really quickly and do like 3 or 4 frames of that, and it might look like rain. Alright, well, 10 seconds starts now. So that's a good enough first frame. Do some of this, do some of this. Maybe I can do like 5 frames. I could have made each one prettier. Okay, that's time up. This image right here doesn't exactly give rain vibes to me, but okay, let's have a look. Okay, that's believable. I could buy that as rain. If you're making a kind of scuffed animation, you cut to this with sound effects to show it's raining outside. Could do the trick. Now, with a whole minute at our disposal, I don't think we can really do anything more fancy, but I'm more zoomed in now, and I think I'm just gonna go for more neat lines and more of them, and I guess more frames total. Go. Okay, so we're just doing a lot more raindrops. I don't know if that many is necessary, but maybe I'll onion skin as well. I think the lines should really just be random. I'm not gonna have them like individually moving down. So turn that off. This is basically all I'm doing. There's some long ones, some short ones. I can do 2 more frames. Don't know if the angles are gonna be very consistent. Oh. I may have done a stroke over the limit, but let's we'll take that. Have a look at what we've got here. Is that better than what we had? It probably is. Yep, it's pretty much the same thing, just more lines involved and a longer loop. Now we make things more interesting with 10 minutes. So I'm still gonna hand draw the raindrops this time, but I think what we can do is make a looped animation of that, duplicate it, have a few layers of rain so we have some depth. Definitely have some splashes on the ground, maybe a background. And we begin. Okay, so I'm gonna try and just do it like straight vertical, and then once I have this animation, I can kind of tilt it as I please. I'm just going a bit more crazy with the amount of lines as well. And then I'm semi-randomly doing the same thing. So if I just spend a couple of minutes on this, that should be fine. This is really taking a lot longer than the other two. Only 4 frames deep. I actually don't know if this looks good, but I have to trust it. It's probably a little thick as well. Okay, I'll take that. Okay, this is the rain animation. I'm gonna copy it. I guess make it a little smaller. Change the alpha to like 60 and change the starting frame. So there's a little more to it already. I'll also take the main animation, make it a little bigger. Put a little blur on that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Man, I'm spending a lot of time on this. Okay, skew it like that. Yeah, okay. Some sort of ground on the background so I have something to splash off. I make it look decent with a gradient. Okay, a lot of messing around with not actually animating, but 4 minutes 40 left. Okay, now we can do some splashes. Make this sort of shape. I'm not gonna make it too complicated because we don't got time for that. Kind of rises up and then turns into droplets, kind of falling back down and disappearing. Maybe like, yeah, that'll do. So now we can place a bunch of those around, timed differently, different sizes. So I'm gonna do like a layer of splashes up here with a few different starting times. And then I can put some in the deeper background. The amount of time that's like naming things and just gonna place a bunch more of these. I'll do 1 more layer of splash as well. Make it look nice and 3-dimensional. 148. This kind of went faster than I thought it would. Of course, with each new layer, I have to add more of them because they're getting smaller. Hopefully it doesn't look too copy-pasted. Also make this, this back layer a bit more blue. Same with this one. 49 seconds. Okay, I really need to change the timing of some of these things. 26 seconds. Yeah, I'm not doing much of a background, am I? What do I want to do? Nothing else, I think. Yeah, I think that's good. 5 seconds. Okay, that's, yeah, I'm done. Okay, I think this won't be too bad. I would have liked to have done a bit more, but oh well. Let's have a look at what we've got. Okay, that's pretty decent. The screen recording is a bit laggier and slower, but you would have seen the real version before this. Pretty rainy. It's supposed to be concrete on the concrete, but I guess but I wouldn't blame you if you thought it was water. I think it still works either way, but yeah. I think the rain looks a bit too in the foreground, but this is way better than the 1 minute. More of an immersive experience. Okay, let's see what I can do with an entire hour. To start off this 1 hour rainfall, I made a background. A dark, gloomy forest with some dead trees and a night sky. That was helpful because I was drawing the raindrops in white and I also need to know where they land. For animating the rain, I used the same method as 10 minutes. In the past, I've made rain by animating a single raindrop and copying it and putting it all over the place. But I thought hand-drawn, frame-by-frame style just looked better. So I'm making this vertical loop like the 10 minutes, but paying more attention to the detail on the line work. I use an onion skin and redraw each line moving downwards in a purposely inconsistent kind of way, so it doesn't look like a flat image just moving down. 8 frames of that gives a varied and interesting enough loop. Then I duplicated the whole rain section and squished it because I wanted it to be a bit thinner. I can also offset the starting frame of the second rain loop for more variation. Now with a good sheet of rain, I'll copy that into a few different layers, changing the size, opacity, and blur to give it that depth, and skewing it so it's moving diagonally in the wind. For the little splashes on the ground, I made a short loop again with more detailed drawings and a few more frames than the 10 minutes. Then I placed a whole lot of these splash graphics all over the ground, with a few rows at different sizes and opacities. The key to making it look natural is setting the starting frame on each one to something different. I also had about 10 empty frames at the end of each loop to give it a bit of a pause. You don't want the splashes that are next to each other to have the same starting point. Aside from that, it's good to have a mix of short and long delays between adjacent splashes. The rest of the time is spent working on the background and making small adjustments to the rain and splashes. So that is quite a bit better than 10 minutes, I would say. We have a fully fledged scene here. Pretty convincing rainfall. I think it would have been good to have another layer or two of raindrops themselves, just so you have a bit more depth, but this works pretty well. There's still a fair few things you can do to enhance this, so let's move on to 10 hours, see what that entails. To set the scene here, I went with a road that's some kind of bridge or overpass, with a city in the background. It's essentially a curved road with 1-point perspective and a city with 2-point perspective. I also sketched in these splashes so I can work out the angle and scale. I wasn't very sure about how to do all this, but you can decide in the end if it worked out. I'm doing pretty much the same thing again for the rainfall, just a lot of frame-by-frame raindrops to form a vertical sheet. Then eventually duplicating that to form different layers of depth and skewing to show wind. The splashes are getting a massive upgrade this time. I'm going for a 3D bowl-like crown shape that shoots up and out before flattening onto the ground. I also added a ripple by using a classic tween on a red circle as a guide, then drawing over that. You have these white lines break apart and some shadows and highlights. Then I go over the splash with some opaque black, and there's some back and forth with how I want to colour it. But for now, some highlights on the water, then some darker tones near the bottom and various patches in the middle. I also have these small droplets coming out the top. To get that 3D effect, I have 4 layers of splashes at different depths. using of course the scale, opacity and blur to distinguish them, as well as the randomized starting points for an organic look. I figured out the spacing on the fence by following a tutorial, although it's not quite accurate because of the curve of the road. And I chucked in a few streetlights. Now we get to spice things up with some leaves flowing in the wind. I simply draw a path for it to follow, then draw a leaf flapping around along that path. I also had flower petals in there, and I'll add to this as I go. On top of the splashes on the ground, I thought it'd be nice to have some extra ripples. So I tweened a white oval expanding as a placeholder to see what that looked like, and I thought it was solid. Then I worked on the splash a bit more. I also went over the new ripples with the 3 hand-drawn layers like before. I could have used the ripple I already had in the splash animation, but it's good to have more variation. Like the rain, I'm also having different depths of debris flying through the air. Now it's time to make another splash, because the more variation the merrier. Using the same exact method and style, but hopefully making it look different enough that you can tell there's a difference. I think it ended up too similar, but it was still worth it to not have every splash look the exact same. Then I fleshed out the background some more, because even though it's a placeholder, I need a guide for what I'm going to paint in Photoshop. I added some tiny splashes on top of the fence, which are more like the ones I had in the 10-minute and 1-hour animations. I decided to add a secondary drop to the splash, which you'd expect more from a body of water, so I guess it's an extremely wet surface. Then it was more flying debris, raindrop tweaks, and some subtle mist on impact. Now, this is when I started working on the background in Photoshop. Unfortunately, I was recording the wrong program for about 45 minutes, but I caught on eventually, and you can see how the rest of it went. The perspective on the fence gave me a bit of trouble. It's something I'll have to practice. I stayed true to what I drew initially, except for leaving out the trash can because it felt unnecessary. The reflections on the ground are really what sell the scene because that's what makes it look wet. And judging by the splashes I animated, there's a good layer of water on the road. After dropping the background into Adobe Animate, I got to work on some overall wavy effects. Using a mask and a sized up version of the background, I had these long ripples move down the screen, as well as a couple of circular ripples. And that is pretty much that. And that is rain animated in 10 hours. Come a long way since 10 seconds. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the outcome. There are some things I could have done better with the background. I straight up didn't know how to deal with the road, like the angle and shape. It was confusing to me. Honestly, not bad though. Probably should have had less of a uniform color on the buildings, but those aren't the focus anyway. I think my only real issue with the animation is the large ripples I did at the end with the mask. Should have made them follow the direction of the wind. They arguably almost do. And it's kind of subtle anyway. Yeah, they need to be more left to right. I was thinking it would just make the water look like it's kind of waving around. And the leaves and flower petals flying around, those look pretty good I think, even though they're just solid colors and simple shapes. I was thinking about shading them in, but if you're gonna go that detailed, you risk ruining it if you don't get the lighting perfect. But I'm sure that could improve it slightly. Anyway, definitely a pretty cool rain scene. So there you go. I've animated rain in 10 seconds all the way up to 10 hours. Rather successfully, dare I say. Well, if there's more weather phenomena you want me to do this with, let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the video, have a nice week, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.